The VO Meter, measuring your voiceover progress. Whether you're a veteran voice actor just starting out or don't even know how to set a level, we're here to help you avoid the pitfalls along your voiceover path to success. The VO Meter is brought to you by Voice Actor Websites, Vocal Booth to Go, Global Voice Acting Academy, JMC Demos, and Sennheiser. The VO Meter is produced in part using Source Connect, made by source-elements.com. And now, your hosts, Paul Stefano and Sean Daly.
Hi, everyone. A couple of weeks ago, we decided to hold a couple of panels on inclusivity in voiceover. Since we made that decision, several events throughout the U.S. and the world have made these discussions more relevant and more important than ever. Now, as two cisgender white males, we didn't want to speak out of turn on these topics, but we did want to provide a platform for those affected by these events to share their stories, experiences, and perspectives in regards to these important issues. So after a short word from our sponsors, you'll hear an engaging discussion on gender and sexuality inclusivity in voiceover, featuring McKay, Mara Junot, Liz Atherton, Judy Scheer, and Niro.
Hey, Sean, what's a vocal booth?
It's an acoustically treated space to record voiceover, sing, or practice music.
Okay, so then what's a vocal booth to go? An acoustically treated space to eat a cheeseburger and fries?
No, of course not. Vocal Booth to Go's patented acoustic blankets, noise mitigation products, and portable booths are an effective alternative to expensive soundproofing. They're often used by vocal and voiceover professionals, engineers, and studios as an affordable soundproofing and absorption solution.
Oh, I have it now. Actually, I've always had it. I've used Vocal Booth to Go's products for years, and I can't recommend them enough. Vocal Booth to Go. We make your environment quieter for less.
As a voice talent, you have to have a website. But what a hassle getting someone to do it for you. And when they finally do, they break or don't look right on mobile devices. They're not built for marketing and SEO. They're expensive. You have limited or no control. And it takes forever to get one built and go live. So what's the best way to get you online in no time? Go to voiceactorwebsites.com. Like our name implies, voiceactorwebsites.com just does websites for voice actors. We believe in creating fast, mobile-friendly, responsive, highly functional designs that are easy to read and easy to use. You have full control. No need to hire someone every time you want to make a change. And our upfront pricing means you know exactly what your costs are ahead of time. You can get your voiceover website going for as little as $700. So if you want your voice actor website without the hassle of complexity and dealing with too many options, go to voiceactorwebsites.com, where your VO website shouldn't be a pain in the you-know-what.
How many times has this happened to you? You're listening to the radio when this commercial comes on, not unlike this one, and this guy starts talking, not unlike myself.
Or maybe it's a woman that starts talking, not unlike myself, and you think to yourself, geez, I could do that.
Well, mister, well, missy, you just got one step closer to realizing your dream as a voiceover artist, because now there's Global Voice Acting Academy. All the tools and straight-from-the-hip, honest information you need to get on a fast track to doing this commercial yourself.
Well, not this one exactly.
Classes, private coaching, webinars, home studio setup, marketing and branding help, members-only benefits like workouts, rate and negotiation advice, practice scripts, and more. All without the kind of hype you're listening to right now. Go ahead, take our jobs from us. We dare you.
Speak for yourself, buddy. I like what I do.
And you will too when you're learning your craft at Global Voice Acting Academy. Find us at globalvoiceacademy.com.
Because you like to have fun.
Walgreens, because it's flu season. You live in a place with doorknobs and handrails and, people.
We tried booking a vacation rental on one of those other websites. They don't always tell you everything.
The stars take it to the red carpet.
We are back live from the red carpet.
California leads the way for change in America, and so does Kamala Harris.
Rated M for mature. Claire Redfield.
And who exactly are you?
So, yeah, what hashtag should I use to describe a grown man in a tuxedo wrestling a goat?
And prior to 1933, many of them belonged to a variety of political parties that were now outlawed in Germany.
This is the story of how Q got curly. Quinn was crazy about curls. Curly fries, curly straws, curly-haired dogs.
Hey, J. Michael here. Thanks for listening to the VO Meter podcast. It's one of my favorites. If you're looking for a great demo like the ones you just heard, check out jmcdemos.com for more information.
Welcome to the second of our panel discussions on inclusivity in voiceover. This episode is going to focus on inclusivity with regard to gender and sexual orientation in what has traditionally been a male-dominated industry, as well as not always tolerant of people from the LGBTQ plus community. We'd like to talk about how, hopefully, there is growing awareness for diversity and inclusivity in the VO world. If you're a frequent listener, you may notice the questions repeated from our last panel, and that's because the issue is so vast, and we were lucky to have so many great people willing to participate that we split the episode in two in order to allow more great discussion.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all of you for coming today. I'm so ecstatic that you're able to be so generous with your time. So before we get started with questions, let's go ahead and go around the round table and introduce ourselves in case people aren't aware. So why don't we start with you, AJ?
All right. Well, I'm AJ McKay with AJ McKay Creative and JMC Demos, and I'm also a voice actor. So there you go. Do you need more than that? Do you want me to tell you why I'm here?
If you want, no pressure.
Well, I came out when I was 17, so as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I'm kind of an activist as well on equality issues and justice issues. I'm really happy to be here and part of the discussion, and I think it's something that's long overdue, especially for our community in the voiceover world as well. So I'm happy to participate and give whatever feedback I can.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so going down to our second row, how about Mara?
Hey, everybody. I am Mara Junot, and I am a full-time voice actor living in Los Angeles. I do a little bit of everything. And I am here because I am bisexual, non-binary, genderqueer, pansexual. I'm a little bit fluid, and so I would love to contribute to this conversation. I hate all the titles, man. I don't like boxes, right? But
labels.
Well, that's why we're here to talk about all them labels. But anyways, thank you so much for being here, Mara. It's great to see you. All right.
You too.
And in the center, the queen bee herself, Liz Atherton.
Hi, I'm Liz Atherton. I am the owner of Cast Voices, and I'm here because this is actually very relevant in our programming because of how we set things up. But mostly I'm here, I guess, if we're going to identify as heterosexual crazy mother of four. But I also think I'm just a lover of humans, and I have opinions. And so I've been in the voiceover industry darn near all my life, and I hope I can contribute something that's worthwhile.
I'm sure you will. Thank you so much for being here. All right, Judy, your turn.
Hi, it's such a pleasure to be here, first of all. I'm Judy Scheer. I'm a voiceover actor. I'm an improviser. I co-own a creative ad agency as well. I'm a former broadcaster, a lot of radio and television, former television news anchor way back in the day, and an actor and a writer. So both behind the camera and in front of the camera and the microphone, everything from commercials to promo to animation. I don't know, what else can I tell you? I'm just very delighted to be here and participate in this discussion, which I also think occurs on quite an auspicious day, given the ruling that just came down the pike. So
Yay!
It's very exciting, and I think we're beginning to see the scales tip towards equity. Just a little bit of forward movement today.
Absolutely, and we're delighted to have you as well. And last but certainly not least, Erin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Erin. I'm an aspiring voice actor. I'm a student. I've been singing all my life. I have a background in acting and performing arts, and my family is in the industry as well. I guess I identify as gay male, and obviously my voice comes off very different. And I've sort of been ever since being introduced to this whole world, I've been starting to explore my own gender identity and sexuality and stuff like that. So I'm very honored to be part of this discussion. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We're honored to have you.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again to everybody for being here. And as much as I kept trying to avoid this discussion because I think that two straight white guys are the absolute wrong host for this kind of discussion. The heavens keep smiling on us and putting things in front of us to make it seem like that it wants to happen. You mentioned the ruling from the Supreme Court today. Also worth noting that SpongeBob is gay officially now. There was a tweet over the weekend that makes things official.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Yes.
And last but not least, it's Liz, the Queen Bee's birthday. So happy birthday to Liz.
Happy birthday, Liz.
All the stars have aligned.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'm 29 Rev 31. Just saying.
Even though you guys, you say, you're two straight white guys, you also are two big allies and are so accepting of anyone and everyone. So, who not better to host something like this? I mean, everyone needs to have a voice and be a part of the discussion in some way, shape, or fashion. So we need all the allies that we can get in the world, and you guys are great. So,
well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't shortchange yourself
as much as possible. and I honestly felt like it's one of those things where, I mean, with so much going on, it's just like, is this the right time? It's like, well, if not now, then when, right? So why not now? So let's jump into it, shall we? So the first thing we'd like to know is, what challenges have you all faced establishing yourself in the VO industry?
Well, the thing about being gay in this society and being a white male, I am very well, I knew I was gay very early on in my life, like 11, 12 years old. I've also, as I've grown as a person, I've understood the white privilege that I have as well with that. I have friends that are a little bit more effeminate and who have been made fun of. I even have straight friends who are on the effeminate side and are mistakenly, called out for being gay, and they're not. So I think that we have to come to a point in society where, we accept people for who they are and not for mannerisms or for speech patterns or, things of that nature. So I've always tried to be real conscious of realizing, who I am as a person, knowing that I could pass for straight back in the day if I wanted to. I mean, in my job in radio, I was closeted early on because you never knew. And you could be fired. So I was always guarded in certain aspects. But I've been very lucky in the sense that most stations that I've worked for have had gay people, and they've been out and open, and it hasn't been an issue. But for me, it hasn't been as much of a challenge as it has for some other people. But I'm well aware of those challenges, and that's why I fight so hard for people who are looked down on as less than or whatever, for not looking or acting or speaking a certain way. I'm trying to change that mindset with people, or I have been for a long time. So I really haven't had a lot of hurdles. You get made fun of in high school, and people, call you names and this and that and the other thing, and I went through all that. But I've never had any hurdles as far as getting work as a gay voiceover actor. But then again, I don't advertise or bill myself as a gay this or a gay that, or, I'm AJ, this is what I sound like, this is what I do, and this is who I am. But I go after those roles. I think that if I find something that is geared toward a gay person, or they're looking for the gay experience, then I'm going to step up and I'm going to audition for those roles. Why not?
Anybody else want to jump in?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. For me, my set of challenges are probably a little bit different. I mean, first, obviously, I'm an African-American woman, and that has its own set of challenges in the voiceover industry. When I first got into doing this full-time 11 years ago, there weren't a lot of opportunities for African-Americans, period, let alone as, trying to figure out where I, for most of my life, had issues with questioning my identity gender-wise. People accuse me all the time of being like a man in a woman's body, or, you know what I mean? And so I never quite knew where I fit. I have a deeper voice that's not traditionally as feminine as some people would, identify, and especially not what I was used to hearing on television. I always thought that if I got into voiceover, I had to have this really soothing feminine voice. And so I was really terrified as where am I going to belong? Because just being African American alone, you get used to what's called code switching, right? Where you have to start speaking whiter when you're at work, whatever that means, or more polished and more articulate to prove that you're, intelligent, and all of these different things to prove that you're not aggressive and things like that. So I already had the identity issues going on with my race. And then you add sexuality on top of that. And it's just kind of like, okay, so now I have to change and be a more effeminate woman so that I can get work and identify as a woman. And luckily, in my experience, I found as the times have been changing, I've ultimately learned that at the end of the day, just being yourself really is important, because once I started to embrace my natural voice and register and personality, the bookings started going through the roof. And suddenly I was booking things that traditionally males might have booked, but they were like, we really want a voice of authority, and we want somebody who can bring the authority of a man with a woman's presence. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of started working to my advantage. But yeah, for a long time, there was quite a bit of confusion as far as, am I really going to have a place in this industry where I can ever, quote unquote, be myself? I know we're actors and we're paid to kind of move in and out of different, roles and identities, but that was definitely a challenge for me.
Wonderful. Who'd like to go next?
I'm going to step in from a different perspective because I'm not a voiceover actor. I don't speak in voiceover. I am someone who's on the periphery, but I promote voiceover. Listen, the Journal of Advertising found that, and ultimately, guys, when we're talking about whether or not you're going to book, whether you can break in, whether those things, as a human being, I'm totally with you guys. You have to find your voice. You have to find your being. You have to find your sweet spot, how you can deliver, and that as an actor. But in terms of diversity and things like that we're talking about, the Journal of Advertising did a study and found that all products out there, if the product is aimed toward a man or it's neutral, then any voice can do it. Male, female, non-binary, Texan, anybody can do it. And that the only time that the gender really mattered was when it was a female product. I mean, I love you, AJ, but I don't want you to talk to me about tampons. But you can go get diapers for the kids. But you know what I mean? So, but I think if we continue to recognize that these are the way that, sitting back, and I cannot speak for Judy, and bless her little heart, she's having a little difficult time tuning in with us now. But but knowing that, especially now, that study was from a while back, but especially now, we are having a resurgence of bringing information to the forefront. We are human beings trying to fight for us to be frigging human beings. And inasmuch, I think the more we are true to our being, okay, you can characterize it all, but if you want to build a character base and you can be true to your being, I think times now, and let's get through COVID, let's get through the turmoils that we're going through. My God, let's get through my birthday. I just want to make it to 60 plus one day. But I'm kidding on that, I'm sorry. But I think that the times are now going to be much more available. Like Aaron, you're a young person coming in through the ranks. You don't have to identify. You don't have to identify in voiceover, especially in line of where things are going now. A friend of mine is a producer for TV, and she, a couple of days ago, got the SAG guidelines for how to make a movie right now in the time of COVID. And it's pages. And it's what it's going to really do is completely alter how movies are made. And I've got a point with all this, I promise. The exception to that are places like Steve Perry's place in Atlanta, where you come, you quarantine for 2 weeks on the campus, you shoot your movie on the campus, and then you go. Those things will get around. But in light of all that happening, there's going to be, and Mara, you can chime in or not, animation is going to go skyrocketing. And as animation, voiceover, and all the conversational. Remember how long everybody was working on being conversational, so it sounded like everybody else. And now, guys, they're calling that the robot voice. Just so you're aware, have you been counseled on lose the robot voice? My point is that now diversity in voices, from characters to LGBTQ plus, and I want to say all those right, those voices have a place. I mean, more so now than ever before, in my humble opinion.
Any other comments before we move to question 2?
For the last couple of years with AI, the request for androgynous sounding voices has hit the market, truly for the first time ever. So we find that, I think, pretty interesting. And it's also entertainment personalities and legends like Elton John who have helped push this forward, Lady Gaga, and that's washing over from the mainstream entertainment, film and television into the voiceover world as well.
So we do have a question that sort of talks about what Liz and Judy just mentioned. However, I'm going to be a bit of a Debbie Downer and stay on script for a second. Have any of you ever faced or witnessed discrimination, either in an audition or in a casting spec, and how did it affect you?
Well, it's a bit of a loaded question, I would think, because most of us audition from home now. So I didn't really come up in the days where, we went in and had to sit around and, we waited for other people to audition. I know that there has been some things, especially lately, that have revolved around, well, I'll just say it because I'm AJ and I'm blunt, white folks auditioning for person of color roles. And for me, I would think that because we are asked to be so authentic, and stay true to our voice and ourself, I would think that when they are casting a role, they want someone to speak from that experience. And as a white dude, as a gay white dude, that's not something that I should be auditioning for. So my personal opinion is that, I think there are plenty of amazing actors out there that that are totally capable of those auditions, and so I think that there is room at the table for everyone. And I don't know how that translates. I mean, that's just my personal feeling. I know there's been some times where folks have been, there have been some questionable things like that happen, and I think that there's plenty of room for everyone, and I think that we should try to stay in our wheelhouse. Now, I can only speak from a commercial promo perspective. I don't work in animation, and I know animation and video games, you can do so many different characters and be so many different things, so there may be a different perspective, but I'm talking about authentic voices for Nike or, for commercial type stuff where they want someone to speak from, that experience. I mean, I know there are straight actors that do gay roles in movies, but, as a voice actor, unless you're, I don't know, I think unless you live the gay lifestyle, how can you really speak from a gay person's perspective? That's just my own thought on that. And I think that to be a heterosexual and to do that, now I'm talking specific auditions, to be a heterosexual and try to speak from a gay person's perspective, you can't really, it's hard to put yourself in that mindset. I mean, I in the sense that when I did come out, my family, there were some in my family who weren't accepting of it. There were friends that I lost, so to know that pain and that hurt, it's kind of hard for some folks to understand in that perspective. So, I've experienced some stuff like that.
What sounds gay? What sounds straight? What sounds black? What sounds white? What sounds Asian?
Welcome to my world. I mean, it's something, you spend your whole life trying to figure out, it's been a lifelong quest to, I have to say it was my biggest challenge when I got into voiceover because I really wanted this. This was the first career that I found that I just didn't, I hated the corporate world, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't the right fit. And when I found voiceover, it was like the skies opened up. This was something I could do, something I enjoyed, something that just resonated with skills that I already had. But I was really terrified as far as, am I going to sound, like a woman enough for people? Am I, and I've certainly experienced on the race side of it, more of the outward quote unquote discrimination or being asked to play something that really isn't who I am. Can you quote unquote be blacker? Can you be more urban? Can you sound like the black that I assume is black, you know what I mean? As if I haven't lived a black life, but I'm being told by white casting people to switch it up in a way that they define as black, and I certainly have, now that I think about it, I actually this just happened a few weeks ago. You're right. I was in a recording session, for some video or something, and some of the producers were saying my voice was sounding a little too masculine, and it kept dipping a little too, can you raise your pitch more? Can you sound more feminine and things like that? And it's just kind of like this, okay, well, when you hired me, I think part of what can be confusing for people too is I do have a lot of versatility. I can do a lot of characters. I can change my voice in a million different ways. For instance, I'm the voice of AT&T, not commercial wise, but I'm the voice of Nationwide Directory Assistance, which is about to actually go away finally, I think this month. But if you call, I sound like this. Like their idea of what your gender is supposed to be or what your representing gender is supposed to be. And, that was a big thing for me is what is my voice? Who am I? Do I sound like, who I am when I'm talking to my best friend? Is it who I sound like when I'm talking to my mom, when I'm talking to my boss? There's this hybrid of, we all experience this to a degree. We all have to shapeshift a little bit in terms of you're not the same person at work as you are with your kids, as you are with your spouse, as you are, you know what I mean? We all kind of do that. But when you add on gender as another layer to that, and then race as another layer to that, it really can be a head trip as far as, well, who is the true me? What voice do you want when you say you want conversational, you want real person? Because I've had to be so many people to make people comfortable in a room. You do start to wonder where you fit in.
I would love to be able to come up with a different word than, because when I see, we looking for an urban voice or looking for, I know that they're looking for just like a hip, young, I know because working in urban radio, there are slang words that like you say, you're hanging out with your friends that people throw around, and I love that kind of, I love that stuff. And I got adopted because I did a lot of urban production, and so I would have to ask, I'm like, what are we talking about? Like when doing club spots, it's like one line was like, it's only $10 a head, and if you ain't got no head, you get in free. I'm like, is that dirty? Is that like, am I saying, is that vulgar? Because I can't say that on the, so they, of course, me being, and I'm pretty hip, but I just wanted to make sure that wasn't any kind of like slang, subliminal, and once they explained it to me, I was screaming because it was funny, I don't think when people say they're looking for an urban voice, like, I don't think that they understand, like, to some people that's offensive, and I wish that we could come up with a word, street smart or just young, hip. I don't know what, because I don't know. I just, when I see things like that in auditions, it drives me mental, as a white dude, it drives me crazy because I just look at that and it looks offensive on paper, and I know that they don't mean it like that.
Right.
Or, maybe they do. I don't know, but it just,
I've included it as a part of my branding simply so that I can be found and be cast. But quite frankly, I feel completely inauthentic when people ask me to be urban, because that's not how I was. I was raised in middle-class white America. I was always the chip in the cookie. You know what I mean? So it's like I didn't have this urban upbringing. But I mean, I can play it, but then I feel like I'm doing a disservice to somebody who really has lived that life, and I'm certainly not being myself, So it's a head trip, to put it mildly.
It's like you don't want to turn down work ever,
right?
But I think that there are some folks that I know will audition for everything that comes along, and I think that at some point you really have to kind of take a step back and say, should I really be auditioning for this role? I mean, I know we're all trying to make money and what have you, but on the same token, you have to be cognizant, especially more so now than ever, of how that looks to other people. Maybe you don't care. Maybe some people don't care. But for me, ethically and morally, I don't want to take work out of somebody else's, money out of somebody else's pocket that has lived that experience, that has fought hard to come up the ranks, and here I am just coming through pretending to be, especially like I said, if it's a Nike spot and they're looking for authenticity, that's what they want. I mean, I would find it so offensive if someone other than a gay person were to try to tell the life story of Harvey Milk, who, it's Pride Month. I'm like, I have read and studied about Harvey and people like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, who were trans women of color, who were two pioneers of the Stonewall riots. And I don't know, it's not like I'm mad and I'm going to go out and be angry, but I just find it offensive that it's like hire someone that knows about these people and who, I don't know, who has more of a connection, I guess. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my head.
We touched on it before, a couple of different points here. Like Mara was talking about assumptions and preconceived associations and stereotypes of what these different groups are supposed to sound like, right?
Right.
And we also touched on it earlier. There are so many people in the entertainment industry from all walks of life. And I feel like a lot of people, this kind of ties into our next question, but it's like a lot of people want to do VO because they're like, yay, I can do all these accents and create all these larger than life characters. And the truth is, usually we're just going to cast people from those ethnicities, with the life experience. And it's just your authenticity as who you are is what's going to book you more than anything else. So like you said, there shouldn't be this competition to stuff that's like, well, that's obviously not me, but I got to pay the phone bill or whatever.
I couldn't imagine them doing an animated series of Black Panther and casting white actors to play those roles. I mean,
I can imagine.
Can you? Yeah, it's like I would hope that I mean, that would, I don't know, that's just, anyway.
I will say BET did it a few years ago, and it was it was an African-American and an actual African cast as well. So that's nice.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, nice. It's a wonderful show if you've never seen it. But awesome. Did anyone else want to touch on that before we moved on to the next question?
A lot of what was said by Mara, I resonated with a lot. And I actually remember having this conversation with you on Instagram. I was asking you, I'm getting all these auditions, and it says, urban, African-American sounding. And my friends and I make jokes about it all the time because, I know it doesn't come from a bad place when I get those auditions, but I think that those words sometimes are connected with a little bit of a stereotype, I guess. And in that stereotype, there's a bit of authenticity. So I think context means a lot, but I'm the first one to admit I can't do that. I never get those out. I never land those roles. I'm terrible at it. And you were so sweet to explain to me, this is what they mean. This is, here's
the code.
This is the code. And I was like, yeah, I sort of get what you mean. And I was talking to somebody else after I had in-person audition too. And she said it was a casting director. She said it's extraordinarily racist and stuff. And I said, well, I don't think it came from that place, but I think that, as somebody who grew up in New York, I grew up with, an upper middle class family, but I went to school in Brooklyn for the first 12 years of my life. And, going from Manhattan to Brooklyn, being who I am, being half Black, half white, going to those different communities, I code switched a lot too. So I definitely understood the different ways in which people would communicate with each other. And I definitely noticed that, there was more of a urban sound, I guess, when it came to, the different places I would be. It's sort of hard to dissect, I guess, especially because, when I'm asked to speak speak urban or sound African-American, my African-American experience is completely different than everybody else's, especially because of how I sound and the shade of Black that I am. And not every Black person is going to sound the same. And I definitely cannot sound the way that, what they're looking for. But I think that it's also good to have the people who can do those voices because growing up, there was a cartoon called Static Shock. And a lot of my Black friends said that they could definitely relate to that hero just because of the way that he sounded. and also the way that he looked. So I think it's, important to have voices like that.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So since we were talking about the idea of sort of the codes and the language we see in casting specs and stuff like that, do you see any stereotypical coding that's relating to sexual orientation versus race? Like, for example, we talked about like urban for people of color, but is there anything for like the LGBTQ plus?
I haven't seen anything really that, like I said, unless it's something specific, for an LGBTQ product, I haven't seen anything until recently. I saw, I know that Spotify, they were looking for non-binary or non-gender conforming voices. It's hard. It's like everyone's voice pattern is so unique. So it's like, how do you identify, or what does a trans person sound like? What does a non-binary person sound like? It's so for me, it's more about the experience. If you're going to tell a story, know that experience. Voice patterns are so different. And, to piggyback what Aaron said, yeah, not all white people talk the same. Not all black folks talk the same. I'm in Kentucky of all places, and I still have, that accent comes out when I'm just sitting around conversing or when I'm drinking wine with Mara.
Yes, it does.
But, I can turn it off when I go in the booth. But I also have friends that I hang out with who are sassy and use a lot of slang terminology, and I get right in there with them. And I think just encourage people to audition from places that you can speak on. And if you don't, if you look at something and you're not a fit for that, leave it for someone else, because there's so many people in this industry now that can bring authenticity to that read, But what does a gay person sound like? If I were to see auditions like that, I would think that they want someone that's lispy and effeminate, or someone that sounds like Paul Lynde, from the old Hollywood Squares days and Bewitched, And so I'm like, I find that kind of stuff offensive too. Like I said, I'm not going to be militant about it, but I'm just like, wow, that is so, you might as well just wrote, looking for a lispy, effeminate queen, because that's what it's implied, because it's like, as a gay dude, if I audition, they're like, well, he doesn't sound gay enough. Well, yeah. All right, but if you want a lispy, queen, well, then let me give it a shot, about 4 or 5 cocktails in, and I'm sure I pull that off really well. So
that's one thing I've been excited to see is the shift in where LGBTQ characters are now being inserted, whereas, not that long ago, just in the Will and Grace days, the only time you'd really see gay people being considered as part of the conversation was to kind of be the comic relief, the court jester sort of archetype.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like, no, we just want to tell the stories, and it doesn't have to be even specific to that. It's just we're taken seriously as fleshed out characters where everything doesn't revolve around being flamboyant or, fitting into this stereotype, just for the sake of inserting that in there as some sort of joke,
Right.
frankly.
Will and Grace was great in that aspect because they, you had the flamboyant character with Jack, but then you also had Will, who was just a regular guy. So It's like, what kind of gay do you want? What exactly are you saying when you say gay voice? Because Will wasn't overly over the top, Jack is, so it's like, how do you define that? So I think it's just an education process for some people. And for me, and that's what I try to do, when I talk about being an activist, I try to educate people, sometimes if I see specs that look a little wonky, but you're talking to agents. You're not going to get to the top. You're not going to get to the person actually doing the casting. So, so it's like, how do we get to those people and let them know that they need to figure out how to better describe what they're looking for, as opposed to, those kind of trigger words that aren't really acceptable anymore.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. What is okay? Because as Mara said, and I've noticed this too, it was actually one of the questions we were going to get to later, but since we brought it up, we are starting to see some of those castings in VO looking for non-binary, looking for trans. What are some good descriptors to use that people from the community would be okay with?
Well, that's a good question.
I brought it up.
A majority of the auditions that I'm getting now are, it's like always non-binary. And I appreciate that a lot. I think when it comes to gender and sexuality roles that are being cast out, especially since, gender and sexuality is always evolving and people are being more open with themselves. And to some people, like, words are just being added to the list. The alphabet keeps expanding. I think to use the word like non-binary is sort of a good umbrella term, because not everybody is going to understand that there's like very, very specific groups of people who identify a certain way. And for someone like me who I don't know what I identify as. I just call myself a guy because it's easier for everybody else. But I also get called she all the time, and I don't mind that either. I think it's great to have that for people for castings to search for people who are non-binary, because it gives them a voice. And there was one example that I could think of, this great Netflix show called Scheer, The Princesses of Power, and there's an actor who voiced a non-binary character, and he's non-binary himself. His name is Jacob Tobias, I think. And he explained how it felt very surreal to him and authentic for him. And I'd like to see more of that.
Anybody else have a thought on that? Maybe from the casting side, Liz?
Yeah, I was going to say Liz or Judy.
What are you putting in your castings?
Well, I'm not doing castings, but I will talk you in terms of the things that come out. Remember, the people that are writing these specs, when I'm sitting here listening to you, and I find it incredibly interesting and learning and fascinating, but you're also tiptoeing between voiceover and on camera. Okay. Some of the stuff you're talking about is on camera, and in an on-camera audition, that's just got a whole different perspective. In terms of the voiceover world, if an audition comes through and it is saying things like non-binary, or it's saying things like, be careful. And a minute ago, y'all were talking about the way the specs are written. Listen, those are written so that they don't get in trouble. They're trying their best to say urban, they can't, and it would be so wrong to say, give me a black voice. All right. So they can't write black voice. Let me give you a contrary. And on camera, give me a fat girl. Well, they're not going to write, give me a fat girl. They're going to say, give me someone that is overly healthy, or, and so you're running into things like that are coming from a, right. But really, okay, maybe I made that one up, but
indulgent. I don't know.
Indulgent. I mean, but here's the case. You automatically go to something. So I kind of want to address a little bit what AJ was saying about authenticity. When an audition comes through like that, and you can tell that they're struggling, but their intent is to describe a voice, right? If it, just like AJ said, that's the time that it's probably not right to throw in a character voice unless they're saying these words over the top. Well, you get over the top in front of just about anything, and anybody can, swing that dramatic right or left. But if it's something like non-binary, or it's something like those kinds of things, if that's not your wheelhouse, then don't do it. But voiceover world is a voiceover acting. Y'all are actors. You are expected, not your face, not your pretty little things there. It's your voice that is trying to move a product, move a character, move a nation. It's that voice. So how you truly identify is not as relevant unless, like AJ was referring, an audition comes through where they really are looking for a unique sound. So I was reading a thing that had been put together by Maria Pendolino. Maria Pendolino, y'all know Maria. She did a talk about this very subject a few years ago. And I think that her suggestions were very good and very relevant. She's like, look, we may not, and guys, by the time y'all see the auditions, oftentimes, not always, depends on how you got it, but your agent has scrubbed it, because your agent knows better than to send the word fat out. Okay? Those kinds of things that happen. So you may or may not be getting that. But what Maria suggested was, let's work with ad agencies. And actually, I think it would be a really awesome thing for any of you to reach out to human beings that work at ad agencies and say, look, I know the world is kind of crazy right now, and I know you're working toward trying to be really inclusive. Let me work with you, even if it's not something that's in my wheelhouse, but let me work with you when you're defining those specs. Let me be part of your team. And that was a suggestion by Maria that I think is absolutely fabulous. And this was from several years ago before we were knee deep in, the world coming to an end with murdering hornets and amoeba eating skin. But what I do think is really credible in it is that we're now open to such things. And you guys are influencers. And you guys are influencers with activism and purpose and other things outside of selling your voice to sell a product. Because I don't care what you do as a voiceover, in a nutshell, that's what you do. You sell your voice to sell a product, whether it's a thing. So reach out, say, listen, I know I just want to help you here, because I think by me helping you here and helping you be part of this identification way up here at the beginning of how you're trying to get what you're doing, we both win. And it's not because I want you to love on me and hire me, but don't be afraid, I will say yes. But it's because I want to sit here and work with you to make your product and the whole world of communication messaging better.
Wonderful. And I think as talent, we assume that the communication is just top down, and we're kind of just this voice monkey that's just like, oh, you want me to speak? How now? Like, but anyways, so kind of jumping off of that point and talking a little bit of a double-edged sword question, but actors often talk about the freedom of voice acting and being able to portray roles that they would never be cast for on camera. And I think, Mara, you've talked about this at length in other interviews as well. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that's true now, or do you still feel pigeonholed and stereotyped to try out and to do roles that you'd rather not portray?
In my experience, I see things opening up a lot. Like I said, I think there's been a lot more awareness in recent years that, when you cast a Black person, that they don't have to sound urban. I just in the past year or two alone, I've gotten so many lead roles in video games, and I haven't been asked to have any sort of, it really hasn't had a bearing on the character whatsoever. The character just happened to be African American, which was wonderful. And again, like I was saying, that I'm noticing more requests for non-binary. And I'm looking at the scripts, and there's nothing that's distinctly specific about being non-binary. They simply just want that to be a part of the world, which is what the world really looks like. This is the problem that we have in general is, we have too many, frankly, straight white men trying to tell the world what diversity looks like when we're not in the room, and so of course, it gets confusing when you have those types of people telling us how to be us. And so I think Liz is absolutely right. We do need to find ways to get in the room and to raise our hand and say, hey, maybe you didn't think to ask me what it's like to be, to live this life, but, here we are. And so the responsibility, I guess, does to a degree, fall on us. I think, like you were saying, as talent, we do tend to feel like by the time it gets to us, it's been through so many layers and so many processes. It's just like, we're just happy to be nominated, to have an opportunity to jump in and participate, that we don't feel we have much of a voice. But I think now more than ever, because inclusion and diversity are such buzzwords, and people are trying to find a way, and you can tell a lot of times the people doing the casting, they are helpless. You can tell by the language they're using. Sometimes they just don't know. They want to make a change, but they don't know exactly what that looks like. All that to say, I do see things opening up. I do see a lot of the stereotypes going away. And I do feel that we as talent probably do need to assume more of a responsibility in taking action to help shift those tides even faster. It's not exactly sure how to do that, especially when you have an agent, do you bypass the agent and say, hey, I want to talk to these guys?
That's work. I think absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that is you trying to get the role. That is you trying to help them get better at it. And you may be talking yourself out of that role 9 times out of 10. But what I really meant by that is you become part of their team. It's work, not part of that particular project, part of the team that's helping to define that. You got to get in on the ground floor. But in that vein, the reason I think the world's going to open up and change is back to my original purpose. You as a voice actor now, especially given with everything doing, you are also your footprint, your visual footprint, your social media footprint, all your activism footprints, all these things that you are doing, the more you are that, you're going to have to be, because the voices, if everything's going to really move to a whole lot of voiceover stuff, people need humans, and there's going to be a whole lot. And a case in point, Olaf, right? Olaf, the guy that does Olaf, is terrific, but I don't know he would be quite as popular right now if that was a different scenario and that was an on-camera thing. But they are using the golly out of him as part of their PR campaign about, Frozen. It's let's talk to this dude. And so now you have the human behind the voice. And I think that's going to be a big trend. And when that starts happening, ethnicity, color, choice, not choice, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, everything about you is going to have to be authentic, because they're not going to get away with it not being authentic. It's not going to happen. You have to be that, because you can't go hire an orange to play a purple. If you want a purple, you're going to hire a purple, because you're going to see the purple.
To that point, I'm actually the purple. I'm the purple worry monster currently for Palm Wonderful.
Awesome.
I'm not, but I guess my soul is. I just wanted to jump in off of something Mara was saying. Let's talk about straight white men just for a moment. They predominantly are the decision makers. Still, yes, we're beginning to see some of that change, but at a 2-to-1 ratio, to be sure, they in every single aspect of life have, in my lifetime, historically been the decision makers. So the more we see in a socio-political climate, in any sort of climate, change happening on boards of directors, more gender equity, more females in position of power of every single color and every single class and every single ethnicity, then the more we're going to begin to see the change trickle down into what we see on casting sheets, in creative suites, and across the board. And I believe that we not only have a voice in this, we have a responsibility in this. And furthermore, even though we may want to say that straight white men have been the problem, straight white men are going to be the solution as well, and must be, in the same vein as any movement, again, in my lifetime, has not shifted significantly until our allies have marched along with us. For Dr. King and in our Black Lives Matter movement from 1964 up and through today, guess what the change is right now? We're seeing it in front of our very eyes. We have the most diverse amount of people, not just in the US, but around the globe, out in the streets, marching. We're seeing it every single day. This is astonishing. That we must have change as this occurs. And the same for gender equity. When men lift a hand up and women are on the boards of directors and you're playing golf with the guys, things begin to shift, because we're seen as human beings as opposed to pigeonholed into you're gay, you're black, you're white, whatever it may be. We're seen as humans, and humans first, with all of our flaws and talents and smarts that we bring to the table.
Just to piggyback on what Judy and Queen Bee there has said, Liz, I think that it's so important. I think so many people for so long, and even I've been told, oh, well, you should keep your opinions to yourself. You could lose jobs, or, you could lose clients, and, you shouldn't be so this or that. I tried reining a lot of that in. But for me, it's not even about politics. For me, it's about morality. It's about human dignity. And when I see injustices done to other people, they don't have to look like me, be like me, or I don't even have to associate with their experience to know when I see an injustice happening, I need to speak up. That was instilled in me from very young in age. And I'm kind of like the odd man out in Kentucky. I mean, luckily I grew up in Louisville, which is very metropolitan and very progressive, whereas the rest of Kentucky is still way behind in that kind of stuff. But I'd like to encourage everybody that may watch this, listen to this, however, to use your voice, live in your truth, fight for what you know is right. Don't just be silent because you're afraid of losing a job, because for every job that may walk away from you, or every client that may walk away, there are going to be 10 more that are going to line up because you are a good person and you're doing what's morally right for humanity. So a lot of people don't want to talk about that. So I'll talk about it because I'm not scared. But I've had several people email me privately and say, ooh, you should really be careful. You could lose a client. For me, when people are losing their lives and being killed because of who they love or the color of their skin, I'm sorry, but losing a client is the last thing I'm concerned about when it comes to that bigger picture.
Morality is important, absolutely, and speaking up when one sees wrongdoing in that capacity. But remember, at the same time, as actors, we're storytellers, and there's a fine line there. I get that with you might lose a job. I try not to bring any politics with me at all. I concur with you completely. What I try to bring with me is a sense of decency and humanity, and to serve the client to the best of my capabilities, whomever that client may be.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And I just wanted to add a quick story because it kind of touches on a lot of the points we were talking about. And I feel like it's a step in the right direction, is that you're seeing casting specs from agents and from indie projects coming in that's saying, like, we don't want characters. We want people from these ethnicities, from these experiences, saying that specifically. And unfortunately, you see this backlash from actors with that scarcity mindset where it's like, shouldn't it go to the best actor? Shouldn't it, like, I can do those voices. Really? And that's the thing. I was like, have you considered they want to give these opportunities to these people? They don't care who the best actor is. They want the best actor that meets that requirement because they want to provide those opportunities. So if you do nothing else, at least say no to the jobs that you're not a good fit for.
I've seen that in a couple of instances where people have said that exact thing. It's like, oh, well, we're actors. We should be able to shapeshift and we can become anything we want because we're voice actors. Personally, I don't agree with that. If they're looking for a specific person to speak on an experience or from a perspective and you haven't lived that, I just think that's unethical. That's just my personal opinion. Some people will agree. Some people will call me an idiot. It's not like I haven't been called an idiot before.
But AJ, it's just like I was talking. It's also because from a very pragmatic standpoint, they're going to take that voice person in you and they're going to make you public because that's what's happening. And you have to be authentic. And I'd love to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to be altruistic and wonderful. I suspect there's a little bit more. I mean, and there are human beings out there that are truly wonderful, but I suspect it's also a very calculated business decision, and good on them, because if they're making those kind of very calculated business decisions, they are at least stepping into the enlightened path. Not to try and sound all holy, but they really are. They're stepping into a way that says, hey, we want this character, and hey, maybe all these things else are going to happen, but we want to also make sure our arse is covered, that we haven't done something stupid.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to piggyback off that, and I've thought about it as well. There's when it comes to like authenticity and wanting to support others who need it and be an ally, I feel like I could notice, especially now, when it comes to people like sharing and speaking up about it. I know sometimes when somebody is being genuine about it and wants to help our community, the Black community, the LGBTQ plus community, and then they're just like making a post because everybody else is doing it and they don't want to be the odd one out. But I see a lot of posts and people saying, and a lot of allies saying, Black Lives Matter, Black trans lives matter, people in the LGBT community matter. And then you have people from my community, I'm in both communities, saying, thank you for being a great ally. And, thank you for using your voice. And I think that's important because we need all the allies we can get. And then you have other people saying, from what I see, like, why are you congratulating them? Why are you just, giving them a virtue trophy? They should be doing this anyways. They should be helping others anyways. They should be helping the voiceless. And I feel like when it comes from a place like that, it'll make them, they might continue to do it, but it might just be less authentic. And I feel like if we recognize and not give praise, but I can't think of the word, but give thanks or just respect and acknowledgement that we have people who are not in the same position as us, but want to help us, genuinely want us to see us grow and see us prosper and be great, then it'll be a ripple effect in a way.
I think with things going on right now, especially with the recent events, I mean, here in Louisville, we we're dealing with the murder of Breonna Taylor, which is very close to home for us. I mean, one of my close friends is a trans woman of color, and last year, or I should say within the last year, we've had 29 murders of trans women of color, and nobody's said anything about that. But I carry that with me, and I do things to put those folks forward and say, well, yeah, but, what about these folks? Like, what are we doing about where are the investigations? It kind of like they get swept under the rug. And for me, it breaks my heart to see people's humanity. I think a lot of people are waking up now, especially with seeing that video of George Floyd. I think people that didn't really realize, because, it's kind of that, oh, that doesn't affect me. I really don't know. But seeing that and having that in your face, even if you don't have a diverse group of friends, or you don't have, you've stayed with your family members and, you don't really, I'm a cultural person, so I soak up that energy. I love people from all walks of life. And, I don't want to just know a bunch of pasty old white dudes like myself. I want to know everybody. Not everybody's like that. And I think that anybody that can change their mindset, no matter how old they are or where they come from, if I have to say thank you and welcome and, glad you're finally here and see, and you're awake now, if we have to give them a little nudge, then I'm all about doing that. I mean, yeah, people should love one another and all be supportive of one another. And unfortunately, this crazy world isn't like that. But yeah, I'm all about, if I see somebody that even looks at me cross-eyed like they want to join the movement and be part, I'm like, come on, here's a pamphlet, get in line, let's go march, let's go protest. Sometimes it takes people a while. You have to give people the benefit of the doubt, I guess. But for those that aren't on board and don't realize the severity of what's going on in the world, I feel sad for them, because they're missing out on so many great people in the world. It's unfortunate.
I think we have to meet people where they are, like AJ and Aaron were saying. It's like, I've seen some people online be criticized for how they're showing support. And I'm just like, are you kidding? Like, if you're trying and making an effort, because I look at it as you have to pick a side at this point. Your silence is picking a side, whether you realize it or not. So, you either say something for or against, but being silent is only allowing more discrimination to continue. And so if you're trying to raise your voice and support, whether it's authentic or not, you're still one more number on the right side of history, as far as I'm concerned. And while I may see through your motivations for doing it and maybe question, the sincerity of it, if it's putting those words in your mouth, if it's, moving you in that direction and bringing you into that world, I say we need it, no matter what. And it's not a time for criticism. It's a time to be, because we can't expect inclusion if we can't be inclusive within our own communities.
And that's still a challenge in the gay community. I mean, gay white men look down on trans women of color. Yeah. They look down on, and not all, but we had that. Yeah. I mean, I've DJ'd in clubs since I was 17, and I've seen all of it. And I don't know. I think whoever is out there in the universe, that I'm the way that I am. I'm not closed-minded, like some folks are. We have a lot of work to do still. But anybody that wants to be an ally or jump on board at this point, I'm like, welcome, open arms, welcome.
Well, one more harbinger, hopefully, of good karma this week was the announcement that there's a new Bill and Ted movie coming out. So, as they said, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. So, I want to thank you for being here. We really appreciate your time. Before we go, anybody want to promote themselves? Tell us where people can reach you if they want to hire you for voiceover work. Why don't we start with Aaron?
Oh boy. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and I also stream on Twitch sometimes. So you can find me at Aphrodite TTV. Yeah, I'll take any audition you want to send my way. I'm up to anything. As long as it's authentic, I am glad to work with anybody. But thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. How about Judy?
Hi, lots of gratitude for being here. I am typically very easy to reach and connect with. Judy at judyscheer.com. My agents are DPN in Los Angeles for voiceover, and on camera, Pantheon. I'm reachable as well via Instagram, Twitter, and old school Facebook.
There we go. AJ?
All of my socials are AJ McKay Creative. Feel free to email me, aj@ajmckaycreative.com. And if you need a demo or you want me to produce a demo, contact JMC Demos. That's kind of been my main gig for the while now. So, I'd love to hear from people. And I'm an open book. So if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out and want to learn how you can get involved, with the LGBTQ movement or Black Lives Matter, and make donations that way, I have plenty of links and resources to send you.
Thank you. And thank you also for doing our sponsor plug for us, JMC Demo, sponsor of the VO Meter podcast.
And as for me, you can find me. I think all of my socials as well are just my name, Mara Junot. Don't forget the silent T at the end. Also same thing. If there's anything I can help with questions wise, in terms of what it's like to be a diverse person, person of color, a person of gender diversity, whatever, anything I can do to maybe share some wisdom, you're more than welcome to reach out. I can be a little slow because I am busy, but don't hesitate. I'll get back to you.
Great. And Liz, anything you'd like to share?
It's Liz. I'm just here to support everybody. If you guys have any kind of questions about voiceover, I've been around a long time. Old school, best way to find me is on Facebook, Liz Atherton.
Wonderful. I just wanted to extend my thanks to Paul's and just thank you all. I'm so grateful for you making the time to be here today.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you.
You too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the VO Meter. To follow along, visit us at www.vometer.com.
We'd also love to hear your comments or suggestions for the show. Or if you have a questionable gear purchase, tell us all about it on our Facebook page or on Twitter @the VO Meter.